problems remain, even though they already have regulations that starting to talk about how to regulate their employment status, how to regulate their work, etc., etc. So then the biggest questions that I still have is when it comes to gig economy is how to properly regulate this, because I'm still believing that proper regulations is one of the way to make sure that a lot of people has it in a fair game, because for most of the time the things about gig economies in Indonesia is like they kind of playing it in a different level with the other people in the business, because there are basically no regulations that regulate them. So therefore they can do whatever they want to do with their game, like with the way they're doing their game here. And but then none of us can actually formulate yet what kind of regulations that are able to properly make sure that this is the right way to do it. Because like as we already previously mentioned, that there are so many different kind of gigs that happening in one countries. And if we reflect it, sometimes most of the regulations that are being made over gig companies or gig economy is basically the kind of regulations that are made with the on-ride or transportation gig economy on in the perspective, even though there are so many different services that we're talking about. So that's probably it. And of course, the next means the big problem over the problems that I just mentioned is how to make sure that those regulations can finally give decent work for people that are working in gig economy. Because like there are also several I think like there are wave of researcher in gig economy that are starting to say that, well, I think we tried, and then we have to conclude that probably there are no decent work in gig economy. There won't be decent work in gig economy. So therefore, the things that we need to push is how to make sure that people can get out of gig economy, not to make sure that they can safely get a decent work in gig economy, because it's impossible. I'm not resort into the idea yet. I still think that it is possible to get a decent work in gig economy, especially in terms of Indonesia. When we're talking about formal employment, it's not actually we don't actually have the best formal employment in Indonesia anyway. So to think that it is impossible to get a decent work in Indonesia, in gig economy, is for me, it's too sad. Like, I don't want to think about that yet. But so therefore, my the question on how to make sure that people get a decent work in gig economy still remain in my opinion. So that's my question. So I'm only answering the first question. I don't know how to answer the second question here. Back to you, Vasishi.
Okay, thank you, Nabila. I think, of course, the first problem that brought up by Nabila here is on regulations. Yeah, how do we regulate this gig economy, where their playing field is usually on this gray area, which is not touched by legal regulations. But then, of course, regulation is not only about disciplining, but also regulation is about protecting the rights. And in a sense, I think Nabila has a different alternative to saying that, well, regulation is not only about regulating the players or the platform, but also how can this regulation protect the workers? And that's your research. I think that you you are doing it right now. And well, later on we can discuss about that later on in the discussions. But now I'd like to give time to Martins. What about you? What's your most burning problems in the
Yes, good question. Do I also now do my introduction talk, or with the slides, or what,
well, you can also put the slides. It's okay. I mean,
yeah,
only introductions.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I think there are many challenges. I think also responding also on the story of Nabila. I think this platform companies, tech companies, they're really good in framing and in marketing. I think they hire the best marketers and lobbyists available in the markets. And if you look at the economy, I think it's also if you look at regulation, I think it's also kind of a two different angles. One is labor law, and the other is how to deal with impacts of technology on workers. And I think those two are in most questions too much combined. Also, if you look in Europe, they're now discussing about the platform worker directive, and they have also these two combined in one legislation. I think it will never work, to be realistic, not too positive about it. Because also just to get over, also to also continue on the story of the villa regulation, I think also the frame of the platform, they let us think that the regulation doesn't apply on them. But that's an experiment what they're doing. There was in Amsterdam, Netherlands, where I come from. There's a big tech conference, the Next Web, in Amsterdam, and there was the CEO of Uber, the big hotel booking platform. He was also the first CEO of Uber. And then he was doing a Q&A on stage, and the interviewer asked, okay, so how do you do regulation in Uber? And then he said, okay, so we're doing something new. So the existing regulation doesn't apply on business, and probably we need to comply with some. But if you are going to worry about that, that's your fault, because then you never get big. So their frame of, okay, we're different, we are a ride-sharing platform, which is of course nonsense. They are a taxi app, nothing less than that. But by that, they also are really smart in getting policymakers and also politicians within this frame of, okay, we are different. Well, they're not different, especially not where you get the labor law. And so I think also maybe also a question for Nabila, also maybe after the discussion is also, does the problem of regulation comes from years of lack of interest in precarious workers? Because before platforms, nobody cared about delivery riders, and now they are really hot in academic research. And I think also many problems on work status there are also not new, but it's just now more visible because there's one stakeholder, a platform, centralized and really visible in the open debate. And then I also think about regulation. Okay, which way are you going to follow? Because the political discussion is on big platforms. Why is this? I also spoke to members of the parliament in Brussels, in Europe. So I asked, okay, but everybody can see these questions are bigger than only gig economy. They say, yeah, we know, but it's not political possible to address a complete reorganization of the labor markets. So we now focus on platforms, and then we go beyond platforms. So I think also looking to regulation, I think it's really important to the question: do you follow the strategy of politicians, which I think will never work, or are you also going to do this bigger picture? And if you look at the problems also in the economy, I think the first is also how we look at it, because there were also the delivery riders and taxi drivers before Grab or Gojek. So it's also always important to look, okay, what difference makes the platform, and what makes on what station doesn't make it better, and what station doesn't make things worse. And if you look at the way how you can deal with this, I think there are also different strategies in how to deal with this. But most people they are looking for a kind of a one-size-fits-all solution. And most of the time they look at the platforms. They're evil. Yes, they're evil, of course. If you stories about the Uber files, it's a pretty evil company. But still, there are also different stakeholders in the debate which are also responsible. And I think most of the times we and also from academia and also politics look too much over the platforms. Are you evil? But I have no responsibility. But in the end, what is the role of government is to secure public values within our society. And what's happening on platforms is a result of the decisions we make. So I think there are many different ways on how to deal with that, and there's no one solution. And to give two examples of use cases where I'm working on, one is the living wages project together with the Wage Indicator Foundation. That I think the first thing is that workers need to be informed about, okay, but how much do you need to earn to have a normal living where you can also support your family. So with Wage Indicator, we're now making a tool for workers in the gig economy for every different occupation you think about. you just say, okay, I am a cleaner via platform, and these are my costs for the year, or I am a motor driver for Gojek, or buying Gojek for Gojek because I'm unemployed. So what are the costs for gasoline, for maintenance, for insurance, and then the rider just can see that on what he or she needs to earn per hour. So I think that really helps. The second one is a project I started myself. It's called GigCV. Especially the ILO, the International Labour Organization, they already say for years, okay, give the worker their data, and they're free. And I think that's quite interesting because nobody knows. There was research behind that. There was full of assumptions. So what I did is I did a research of a year to really think about, okay, how can you give the worker their data on reputation and transaction in a kind of a CV. And we also now we realize this. So with GitCV, it's launched in 2022, so 1.5 years ago, where in Netherlands 100,000 gig workers can download their CV just by pushing a button on the platform. And for now, there are over 20,000 CV downloaded by the workers. And around this project, we're just going to do also the research to see, okay, what is the value of this data for the worker, but also what is the effect on the platform when platforms share data with the worker, because most platforms they say, okay, yeah, but this data this is really valuable, so I don't give it away, or people will leave the platform and we're doing no research, okay, but it's just true, and I can say it's not. The data is less valuable for the platform, the worker, than you think. So it's easier to give away than free, of course. And also, when people are able to download their data, they're not going to use the platform directly. And some platforms that are working together with XTV in Netherlands, they also use it in their marketing. Like Charlie Cares, which is a platform for babysitters. And they say, okay, if you work via our platform, then you can download your CV. And this can you use for your further career. So I think there are just some really small things you can change from this perspective to make it more work for everybody. And also, if you look at the title, last thing about this session, alternative futures for the gig economy, I think we maybe better rename it to futures for the economy. In the end, the gig economy is not a kind of planet. Or a silo, and as long as we just look at it as a silo, I think we're going to miss important things.
I'd like to continue with the GigCV idea. Is there any slide we can show about the GigCV ideas and more clear?
Yeah, I think
with like page.
Good question. Also present this in the room.
I'm doing my job as a host here.
Really good.
I'd like to give some background context. Mine is my colleague from Utrecht, actually.
Yeah.
You found?
Yes.
I found it. Number
19.
page 19. So yeah, we were working in Utrecht together in 2017 or 18, and then you got doing your research and also this initiative of GigCV.
Yeah.
And I was very interested with this idea because then not only trying to use data on workers, but then the idea is on the data portability, right? So how can we use data not only benefiting the platforms or not only benefiting the company, but also it could benefit the workers? And how to do that, right? And because it's also related to our questions today, how can we solve the problem? I think GigCV could be one of the alternatives for futures of gig economy. If you can imagine how data of workers in the many platform can be also benefited by the workers as well. Right. You want to add in GigCV?
Yes, I think the biggest problem with data sharing, to go to this niche subject with the gig economy, is that it is just complexity. It's really easy to make things complex, also in life, but also within the data sharing. So when you talk to a data sharing expert, it's getting complex in 10 seconds. And complexity is like snowball. It starts really small, and within 10 seconds it's really big. And then it's got money because first you need to build a lot of stuff. This costs money. They need to add a business model. It doesn't have much more money, and in the end you are 5 years and it doesn't work. So what I did with XCP is to see, okay, how can we avoid everything that can contribute to complexity. And by really focusing on that, it worked. So XCP. So people who are working via platforms, they build data on, okay, how many gigs did you do, what skills did you use, the ratings from your customers, what clients do you have within two business platforms, and this data is valuable for the worker, or we think is valuable for the worker also outside of gig economy. So what we did is we thought, okay, let's not go to build a system, because there were quite some companies that startups that tried to build a data sharing system, and they all failed because in the end they embraced complexity, and because of that their operational costs were about 20, 40, 50,000 euro per month. And what we did with XCP is only make data sharing standards on how platforms themselves can share their data with the worker, combined with some technical tools they could use. Some legal documents, maybe also the GDPR proof, so the privacy regulation in the and also one shared grant. And because that's it was really easy platform to implement, and also the cost of operation are almost zero. So when 1,000 CVs are downloaded, it costs maybe 2 cents on hosting costs. So this is the XCP website. If you can go to the next slide, please. Because they also see on which domain we focus. Because the question of, okay, for what kind of worker could data sharing be valuable? And my assumption was, also talking to many people about this, is that most of them is on the kind of work where the client chooses the worker. Because when the algorithm is making a match, then the whole workplace is just a kind of an outsourcing of HR. But this doesn't say anything about the quality of the worker. And then we focus on location work, because my networking in that is quite good within all the of these companies. So because in the end, you trust me to start with that. Next slide, please. So thank you. So then we were looking, okay, what kind of data then can you share on the platform? And for this also different per platform. But here you see also a list. And then at slide 23, you see a example. That's two slides further. Yes, perfect, thank you. That's an example on how this Roamler, a big Dutch gig platform, they really built XCP within their system. So XCP isn't a separate website where platforms send data to and just give data, whatever. No, it's something that's the platform built in within their own system. And within the profile of the worker, they can say download the XCP, and then behind the scenes, data goes to the server, then the VF is ready and then so back. But that's all. So when the researcher is asking, okay, Martijn, can you give data? No, I don't have. Because if you have data, you make things complex. And I don't want to have it. So the only data I have is how many downloads there are from this platform. And also the platform, they also buy contracts. They also agree on joining together for academic research. If they don't want to join for academic research, they're not welcome to join XCP. So they are recording who is downloading, and then I can send the workers via them a questionnaire to research the impacts. But with XCP, I have no data because I don't want to have any data. We want data.
But what I really like is how we can choose to simplify the solution of a conflict. Data sharing, data grabbing, or data sort of data issues is very complex. But the way we're trying to build up the initiative of XCP is how to simplify this issue of data. And also by not owning the data of the workers. You don't have data of any workers in the XCP. What you do in the XCP is helping workers to get their own data from the platform by signing sort of contract or agreements between the platform and the workers. And that's where you put, how to say, your missions, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I like, a simple answer for a complex problem.
Yeah.
Well, of course, let me continue first. I'd like to discuss more with you, Martin, on BCP and other issues as well. But now I would like to invite our next speaker, Masena. Hi, Masena. So again, Masena, same questions to you. What do you think the most problematic issues on gig economy, and what sort of solution, what sort of initiative that you are working on right now, or you think would be potential for the future of gig economy? Okay, Masena, time is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mbak Suci. So for me, the two burning issue related to gig economy or the platform economy is there are two. First is the governance. Second is where the money goes. So first, governance. Governance, what I mean is the power relation between the mitra, the partners, and the platform. So the power dynamics is not good. So there are many policies that are not beneficial for the partners, and most of the time, what the partners can do is only doing strikes. Like in Indonesia, there are multiple strikes that already happens by the drivers. But most of the time they can only hold on for maybe 3 days or 4 days, and they cannot continue because they are losing their livelihood, right? For 3 or 4 days, they did not take any orders. But in the end, usually there will be a few demands that are being followed by the platform, but it's not everything. And still the drivers or the drivers will get the short end of the stick. So first is governance. So how the policy is made, how the suspension rule is made, how the revenue sharing, the price of every kilometers, the work schedule, and those kind of stuff. And then the second is where the money goes. So yeah, agree that I think what Martin is saying, platform opens up the labor market for many people as the first step. So I also realized that many people who come to especially the drivers platform, yeah, they see this as a better opportunity. Sometimes at the beginning they only try it as a part-time, but then they see the money and then they join full-time. But still, yeah, where the money goes is mostly to the VCs, the founders, employees, but not mostly to the partners, right? Even though a few months ago when Goto opens to public in the stock exchange, they give the drivers, some of them, the ones that are the oldest one, yeah, the oldest one who joins the platform, they get special stock so that they can get it when the company is going public, but it's not that much compared to what they have already put into the platform. Yeah, I think Martin and Mbak Nabila also uses those two platforms, the Grab and Gojek ones, and yeah, they call themselves salam satu aspal, pejuang jalanan, like the street warriors, and they are the ones who are on the road, and then sometimes even they need to be on standby at midnight, at early days. But yeah, once again, the money will go to those people who are not actually on the ground. So these 2 points, the governance, yeah, and the power relation, how the policy is made, how the money is being distributed between the platform and the partners, and yeah, where the money goes. So in the past few weeks, I think, or few months, there is a pressure for the platform to be profitable, if you follow the news, and they keep increasing the percentage that they get from each transaction, right? I think last time 20 or 30%. Initially it was 10, and there were so many benefit if you join at the beginning, so many bonuses, so many like the money is good at the beginning, but now the honeymoon period is over, profitability is being pushed by the market. Yeah, the platform is taking more and more. Even on the food delivery service, they take, I think, 20% from the price, so that many restaurants actually increase their price, right? So they increase their price on the platform compared to if you come directly to the restaurants. Regarding those two problems, the potential solution that I see is called platform cooperative. So maybe if anyone is opening your browser, you can Google platform cooperatives. Yeah, and also, yeah, I found it because of Trevor. Like maybe Martin also knows Trevor's too, right? So I was inspired by his writing on Medium at the, I think, 2014 about platform cooperative. The essence of platform cooperative is, yeah, imagine those platforms, but they are owned by the partners and the users democratically. So cooperative, yeah, I think most of Indonesians know koperasi, yeah, but usually we know koperasi as the place to borrow money, and that's it. But actually cooperative can be anything, can be any business. And the key point that differentiate cooperative with other company is the democratic ownership. Democratic ownership means compared to PT or limited liability company, the usual ones, where one share is one vote. In cooperatives, one person is one vote. So the decision making and the governance can be beneficial to the ones that are many. For this case, usually the ones that are many is the partners, right? Compared to the employees or the founders or the VCs. So hopefully through that stronger decision making power, we can create a policy, a platform where the policy is actually benefiting the partners. And then because of that democratic ownership and decision making, the money can be divided better because, yeah, we are the partners, if they are the one who majorly own the platform, that means they can create a policy where maybe the revenue sharing is better for them, or even the dividend or SAU, or maybe in, yeah, patronage in cooperative term, it can be divided better for the partners and the users, not just the employees and the founders and the VCs. So there are some examples in outside of Indonesia. I think maybe later I can share the slides. So I think platform cooperative is a potential solution. There are but the problem right now is there are only a small amount of successful stories. So people are still skeptical for this idea, especially in Indonesia too, where cooperative is mostly related to scams, to, yeah, frauds. Even though the basic idea of cooperative is powerful, which is a democratic ownership of companies. Yeah, I think that's from me, Mbak Suci. So governance and where the money goes with platform cooperative as a potential solution.
Okay, thank you, Mas. I think you brought up the questions about business model of gig economy, where dominantly this business model of gig economy is really based on capitalized market. But of course, the problems in this capitalized market about the issue on the governance and also the monetization, where the money goes in this business model, and your solution is on the platform core. Well, I think we can of course discuss about the possibility of having a platform core in Asia. How do you found so far on your experience of trying to mainstreaming the idea of this platform core? So we have a bit of warming up already. If I may. I have more questions to the forum here from Mbak Nabila. I think major questions is can regulations on gig economy protect workers? So what sort of considerations we can do, or what sort of navigating strategies we can do in order to imagine a different regulations that protecting workers. And from Martijn, is the city possible to implement not only in the Netherlands, but also in Indonesia and also other countries? And from Masena, is platform co-op is something possible also to mainstream and become the futures for gig economy. So I open the forum to participants here in the room as well as in the Zoom. Feel free to raise your hands to pose questions to our speakers and also to share, your perspective, your response to the questions. Okay. And of course, I also invite our speakers to give comments and response to each others, because I think for Mbak Nabila, for example, the new questions about regulations. What do you think about Europeans' experience on GDPR, for example? Is it something that possible to implement in Indonesia, or what sort of considerations that, this is something that we cannot implement in Indonesia from GDPR, for example? Let's start from Mbak Nabila first. Any response maybe to Martijn's and also Sena answers?
Oh, so respond to other speakers, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's all of the things that are mentioned by Martin, by Masena is quite interesting and also related with what I already mentioned about how to imagine a gig economy with that can provide actual decent work and decent condition for the workers. Because like when it comes to regulations, for example, I think Martin's knows more about how the European is trying to regulate not just the employment classifications, because nowadays when we're talking about regulations in Indonesia, it seems like we're only talking about the employment classifications, because like, I'm not saying that it's not important, because of course it is important, especially coming from me in the labor perspective. Of course, it's very important to talk about the employment classifications of the workers in the platform, but it's not the only things that needs to be regulated. That we also need to regulate about the data privacy. We also need to regulate about algorithm. We also need to regulate about a lot of things that are related to the gig economy model itself. And it seems that a lot of other countries are starting to go into that directions. Some of them because they're already done with the employment classification stuff. Like a lot of countries already, like it feels like, okay, we're done with the issues of employment classifications. But also there are countries who's not doing the employment classification bit. Like several weeks ago, I think I remember hearing some presentations of some of the countries that are leaving the questions of employment classifications behind, but they focus on the other things that are more specific to regulate about. And of course, from Indonesian perspective, I don't know whether it works or not, because we're not even starting the employment classification bit. We're not even having any regulations at all. Like, well, I'm not saying that there's no regulations, but we have a very small scattered regulations about transportations online transportations, but that's it. Like, we basically have no bigger regulations that are more general talking about gig economy. But so my takes on Martin is from the peoples that are coming from European Union, who has more sets of regulations that are regulating gig work. From your idea, like from your perspective, like which are the way, like from some of the regulations that are already happening, like do you think that talking about employment classifications is still the most pressing thing, or regulating smaller and more detailed things about gig economy is actually more relevant? Because I think that he mentioned about how the gig work, how gig companies is actually comply or with the regulations or not, because we know that a lot of gig companies are not compliant with the regulations about employment classifications. Like, for example, Uber, when there are starting regulations about employment classifications, that they have to pay minimum wage, etc. They always have reasons to not comply with that. Like they will talk about like the minimum times that the workers needs to spend on the platforms, etc., etc. So I'm just wondering, like, whether actually focusing on those employment classifications is kind of like wasting time, and it's more important, and it's more easily uh, easily it's the way to make the work the companies more compliant is actually regulating those smaller things, like, you know, data stuff, algorithm stuff, making sure that how the data is shared, who has the data, who has access of the data, is actually the way to go on regulating gig work. And for Masena, this is actually I heard several times about platforms cooperative, but I don't know that the platforms cooperative is actually is also doing their work in Indonesia. So it's very good to hear about what Masena is already talking about. And it's interesting when Masena mentions that the idea of platform cooperative is is heard with a skepticism, especially in Indonesia, because if you think about it, we should be the countries who's not skeptic about this idea, because we are very much familiar with cooperation. You know, like, we're so much familiar with the cooperation. So it's kind of interesting when Masena mentions about that. When people talk about this in Indonesia's perspective, they are very much skeptic about that. Like, I'm just wondering why. Like, is it because like we cannot think the idea of the gig economy without capital, like without capital and capitalism, it just seems like too good to be true? Or it seems like, you know, when something is too good to be true, sometimes we think like, well, it's maybe it's bullshit because it's too good to be true. Or what do you think is the idea of behind this, that skepticism behind beside the things that you mentioned? It's about like, well, nowadays there are a lot of scam regarding cooperations, but there are a lot of cooperations who's not a scam as well. So like I'm just thinking like, what makes it? Because like, if this is an idea that we can raise behind in Indonesia, I think I will be the one who's like who wanting to be the one who push this idea, because like it's very Indonesian. This is actually an idea that are very much in line with our the things that we usually hear, we usually do in here. So yeah, so that's probably my take.
Okay, thank you, Nabila. I think your comments sharpening our discussions into two very interesting points. The first one, of course, on classifications. To what extent the classification is something important, or it's just something like you waste the time and just like to move forward on more prioritizing issues. And maybe for Masena is that what happens about platform co-op in Indonesia. Maybe later on, Masena can share more on his experience. First from Martins.
Yeah.
You wanna respond to Nabila and Sena?
Yeah, of course. So thank you very much also for your questions and also elaboration on the topic. I think first thing that you addressed was compliant regulation. Of course, it's interesting to have a discussion about this because, yeah, common sense says, okay, yeah, we as citizens need to comply with regulation because else we get a fine or go to prison. And it's companies, especially tech companies, are really easy on saying, okay, but I think this regulation doesn't apply on me, so I won't comply. Or that's the chief of the European Commission went to Elon Musk and Twitter, said, oh, yes, good news, Elon Musk wants to comply to our regulation. Okay, but is it news that companies want to comply with regulation? I think when we are going to look out at companies like this, I think there is something really wrong. Yeah, so your question, does worker status make sense? I think it all depends on in which part of the world you are. Because in some parts of the world it does make sense. In other parts of the world it doesn't make sense. There's also really nice. Also just published a blog on the least index of labor protests. They look at labor protests all over the world. There you saw in parts of the world where employment status doesn't give you anything more. People are not going to protest for it. They are going to protest for better pay or other things. But with it, I also want to go back to my previous comment about how to detach the worker safety discussion with the impact on technology on worker discussion. I think it's really hard to say, okay, when you are a home cleaner or a taxi driver via a platform, then you need to be but when you are doing it via other channels, so another matchmaking system, not a peer-to-peer platform, then it's not. So I think for the worker safety discussion, you really need to go further than only gig work. Like in taxis, like in Netherlands, taxi drivers, they were always freelancers. And now they're also freelancers with Uber. And now you say, okay, but that's bad. Okay, but why didn't you say that for 20 years ago about taxi drivers? So I think it will be really hard when you really put workstates only links to the way that a match is being made, because then you got lots of discussion, and then they're really circumventing the variables. We also saw with the 85 legislation in California. They said, okay, we got 5 different criteria. When you combine that, then you need to be employees, and then say, okay, very nice, but we're going to change our system so we don't comply on these 5 points anymore. Good luck with it. And then you put 200 million on lobbying money within campaign for different legislation. So I think it would be really good to detach the division on regulation from labor law or workplace to more broad about the application. So when you are a delivery rider, it doesn't matter how you get your work. Are you employed? Yes or no? It's also a decision you need to make. And the other thing is then the impact of technology on workers, where you really, what's really important to really create more, to really reduce the information in the asymmetry. Because in the beginning when platforms came up, about 12, 14 years ago, people they all say, okay, but you've got now a central player in a highly fragmented market of demand and supply, so we're going to have transparency. But of course, it was quite naive because in the end, the platform they only make more information asymmetry, because as a rider, you have no idea how much you're going to earn. You have no idea who your competition is. So I think that there's lots of regulation needed in that. And I think last thing also to the link also to the case of Mercedes, also a link to the previous question is also about where the money goes. Is there money somewhere to go? Because most gig platforms, they don't make money. They lose money. Even just a takeaway, they are here for 15, 20 years in mostly Europe and also now in the US, they want ramp up. They're still on losing money. So maybe a more fundamental question is how are we as a society are going to value work from others for personal services? Because the question is, can gig work exist when you pay workers fairly? Because like in Netherlands, where I come from, a home cleaner, that's a informal market. But now unions say, okay, but the platform they need to employ. But then you have informal markets, about 12 to 14 euro per hour, versus the non-informal markets, 28 euro per hour. We all know that consumers will never pay 28. Also here, of course, in Indonesia, I had a Grab bike yesterday for half an hour for 50 euro cents or something. And I thought, okay, this is a mistake, but this is. So I think we also have discussion more in society. Okay, how do we value work, and what are we going to pay for it? Because I think most gig work, because also many discussions about gig work is okay. We need to give them pension and employment benefits, but most of the time the alternative for a gig worker is like also needs to support their research day is another shitty paid job. It's not that the gig worker's alternative is a really good paid job, good salary and pension and company car. So I think we also need to as a society also acknowledge that there is a part of the labor market where we as society need to be proud of. And the last question also question to Senna is I see because I'm also following the Better Cooperative debate for about 8 years and now also involved in that. I think at first, do the economics work? So if you want to pay work fairly, do clients want to pay the money? And also how you all think about most platform cooperatives, they are single stakeholders. So the workers, they only govern the platform. But let's say the restaurants and the clients, they're not in. And if we look at a more historic development with the labor market, let's say taxi market, we all know, we thought it's a cartel. When one stakeholder is in charge, most of the time it benefits the other one. So how platform cooperatives can also make it more balanced, more balance between different stakeholders. Because if you only go to focus on stakeholder cooperatives, it would be maybe good news for the worker, but then we value the clients, and then in the end, the clients are also then voting with their money.
Okay, thank you, Matan. I think there's some provocative idea about how do we value work, and I think I like the points on how usually gig economy or gig workers are working on informal jobs or informal workers, and globally, I think we normalize informal job as less value rather than formal jobs. And I think that is the dominant discourse right now, that formal job is better than informal job. And I think by asking the questions, how do we value work? How do we value these informal jobs? Can we, value? Can we have an alternative value toward this informal job? Because if, like for example, home cleaning, taxi, can we live ourselves without cleaning our house, for example? It's very important and a substantial job, but we normalize to less value this kind of caring job, this kind of informal jobs. Then I think that's the key takeaways from Martin, and also of course I'd like to continue with Masena about platform co-op. I think there's also practice about, well, we cannot forget in the platform co-op idea, it's not only about how workers own platform, but it's also we need to think or take into account the stakeholders of this business, for example. Okay, I give time to Masena right now to respond to my points and also to Nabila.
Yeah, thank you. I think the context is right for me to share the slide, because the comments from Nabila and Martin is, I think, aligned with what I will try to share through the slides. So I think I'll share my slide, Mbak Suci.
Yes, please.
Okay, then. Yeah, I think quick response first to what Nabila and Martin was responding. So first, yeah, people are skeptics to co-op first. Yeah, because of the scams and the frauds. But next is because people already put cooperatives in Indonesia into boxes. The box is called old, archaic, and then they are only a place to borrow money and to buy daily needs. Most of the time, the cooperatives around us are simpan pinjam, credit unions, and consumer cooperatives. So people only know cooperative from those two things, even though cooperatives can be anything. And then cooperative is known as something old. So the regular generation of the board of directors, of the management is pretty bad. And most of the time, people who have the skills, the business skills, the managerial skills, they are not interested to work on cooperatives because it's not interesting, and yeah, it's seen as second tier. And then for Martin, yeah, I agree. Related to the balance between stakeholders, currently in the cooperative discussions, in Indonesia especially, we have a new regulation related to multi-stakeholder cooperatives. So usually cooperative is only one type of membership, right? Whether it's consumer, producer, or worker. But now we have a multi-stakeholder. That means in one cooperative, there are multiple types of membership that can combine. For example, a platform that is owned by the consumers and the partners plus the workers, for example. So there are 3 ownership inside one entity that hopefully can balance the needs of those 3 types of members. I think that's the quick response first. Thank you so much for the response. And related to what Mbak Nabila and Martin was saying related to regulation and then data portability about gig CV. I think, yes, there are some options that we can try to improve the welfare of the gig workers. First, as for sure, is government regulation and enforcement. I built the enforcement part because usually that is the part that is missing. So regulators are being asked to create regulations, new rules. The rules are made, but they are not enforced. For example, I think I saw Mbak Nabila's presentation somewhere that say actually two-wheel taxi or objects is not actually regulated. Yeah, they are not they cannot actually be used for commercial transportation compared to taxis and angkots and those kind of stuff. So the enforcement is pretty meh. And also what Martin has been saying about the lobbyists in US, in many countries, the lobbyist is pretty strong. So that's why the regulation, even though we can try, there are many places that try to regulate better, but the regulation at the last point or usually at the referendum cannot be approved, or even if it's approved, the content is already lower than what we expect. The content is much lower than what we expect because it's already been tinkered because of those lobbies. Second is gig workers organizing. They protest, they create strikes, like what I mentioned before. Consumer feedback, maybe the consumer gives some feedback and then they try to create a better environment for the workers. And then what Martin has been building, data protocol or standards, so the effect of platform lock-in is less. So people can move around easier, even though maybe this is not really beneficial for the platform themselves. Most of the time, platform will want to create a walled garden so that the data is only for on their side, cannot be brought anywhere else. For me, myself, the trigger to explore about platform cooperative was a few years ago. There are many protests from the public transportation set of things, the taxi drivers, the angkot drivers. They protest about the online transportation apps. But on the other side, the drivers are also protesting. So I was confused. So who is benefited from these platforms? The drivers outside online are protesting. The drivers in the online transportation are also protesting. So who is being benefited from here? And then I found this writing from Trevor Souls. I suggest maybe if you have the time, others please search for this writing. This is one of like something of a manifesto about why platform cooperative is important. And the definition of platform cooperative is business that sell goods or services. The key blah blah blah, and the key point is democratic decision making and shared platform ownership by the workers and users. So imagine startups or any platforms that you know, Gojek, Tokopedia, that is owned by the ones who use it, the sellers, the drivers, the consumers, not only the PCs. Why? Because in cooperatives, the one who can govern indirect are the members. I'll give some examples. So maybe so that the imagination, our imagination can grow. How platform cooperative can solve the problem of decent work in gig economy. So this is Stocksy, platform cooperative in Canada. They are actually owned by 3 types of members. So they are a multi-stakeholder cooperative. They are owned by photographer, staff. Staff here means the workers who built the platform. And then some advisors. The advisors are the founders, some experts who can help them to build the platform. So they divide the profit between these 3 type of members. Can you I think I'll throw it to the floor. Can you guess how many percent that goes to the photographer? So photographer, staff, advisor, if thought we can add them into 100%, right? how many go to photographer? I think maybe anyone can chat.
90.
90. Mbak Suci already know. Maybe others 50.
50. Ada yang jawab. Gabriela 50.
Siska, Alia 80. Okay, one more. Anyone?
From the room.
Nabila or Martin also can. Mbak Suci already.
70. So 90, 80, 70.
70. Okay, pretty big.
Very cool.
Yeah, thank you for the answers. But actually, it's close to Mbak Suci, what Mbak Suci was saying. Yeah. So imagine a platform where the profit is mostly given to the partners. Stocksy
To the
is a stock photography platform, right? So if you are a photographer, you can put your photo or your video and people can buy your photo. So 90% of the profit goes to the photographer. So they are actually really prioritizing the wealth of the welfare of the partners. The staff and advisor only get 5%. Here we have a case study from start.coop. I think I can share it on the chat if you guys want to see it. So the interesting part, this is about the economic benefit, right? So 90% to photographer. But on the other hand, for the decision making, it's different. It's not 95 and 5. So I'll make it quick. For the decision making, the advisors have 5 board seats, staff has 2, artists have 2 seats. So advisors is more dominant on the decision making side, but they only get 5% of the economic benefit. So here is an example that the economic benefit and the decision making is 2 different things. Even though on PT, on limited liability companies, 1 share is 1 vote, and it means 1 part of the profit, right? So the decision making and the profit or the economic benefit is embedded into 1 thing. Even though governance or decision making and economic benefit can be divided into 2. So this is an interesting way to make sure the governance is still directed towards what the advisors and the founders wants, but they acknowledge that most of the economic benefit comes from the artist. So we should give the artist more. They have a pretty complicated way to take decisions and to make policies. So this is just an example. Another one is drivers.coop. This is on New York City. So this is actually something like Uber, Gojek, and Grab, but they are 100% owned by the workers. I was skeptical at first because this is a very difficult market to push through, right? Their competitors have so huge war chest to get the market, but actually they already grow pretty well, 10 times on last year, and then how many times more in this year we are not sure yet, but they are growing. I mean, that's commendable. And these are great numbers from their side. And the interesting part of drivers co-op is they are trying to create a federation. So imagine they are starting from New York, right? They already built the app, they already built the market. They imagine, for example, in Jogja. So somebody in Jogja, they want to create a platform. They can use the app and the system that drivers.coop already made. They can use the playbook that drivers.coop already have about how to recruit drivers, how to recruit customers, and we can own the platform together. So federation means there will be many cities that use the same system, but each city they can create their own policy or they can manage their own drivers ownership. So I think that's an interesting way to see, rather than one single big thing. We are a federation of small things that are building something together. One more, Up and Go. This is owned by the cleaning. Maybe in Indonesia, others are familiar with Go Clean, even though they are closed now. But this is a cleaning service platform in also New York. They just opened in Philadelphia. And they emphasize the part that the platform only take 5%, rather compared to others who take 20 to 50%. They just open in Philadelphia, yeah, and they are growing. So how about Indonesia? There were some attempts to create at least the discussion group, the people who are interested to create classes. We already joined a few international course on platform co-op. I think Mbak Suci also joined one of them. Yeah, we met there. But still, yeah, it's pretty difficult. One of the incubators that we're trying to build an ecosystem of platform cooperative in Indonesia is called InnoCircle in Purwokerto. This is from our friends in Kopkun Institute. But it's pretty difficult. I think they've already tried multiple batches of incubation, but none are actually living to the live to tell the tales. I mean, it's pretty difficult. I commend the effort from InnoCircle. In Indonesia, we already tried to create a platform cooperative consortium, but still in exploration. But still, yeah, I think it's a classic problem of capital and skill. On the capital side, we are defeated most of the time because, yeah, the capitals are pulled towards the venture capital based style of business that expect huge returns. Cooperatives cannot give that because the most of the economic benefit will be back to the owners, which means the partners, and also skill. Once again, like what I mentioned before, cooperative usually is known as something that is old, archaic. People are not interested to join cooperatives because of that. So it's pretty difficult to create a normal business. Moreover, if you want to create a startup cooperative business. So currently, yeah, me and a few of our friends are creating solution to these 2 points. We are trying to create a cooperative friendly capital, but still ongoing, and also an incubator that is focused on productive form of cooperatives. So not only borrowing and also consumer cooperative, but also worker or producer cooperatives. I think that's it from me. So yeah, I think hopefully that can give a few, can expand our imagination about what is possible. But once again, the success story is a few. There are so many failure stories. We are still getting there, so that people can see this as an option, or at least they can get inspiration from here, so they create their own type of solutions. Thank you, Mbak Suci.
Okay, thank you so much, Mas Hena. I think thank you for sharing the experience of platform hold in some countries as well as in Indonesia. I appreciate the community that you initiate platform hold, even though I think even though maybe the level is still in the niche level, that we are still trying to build up discourse about normalizing the idea on cooperative and platform hold. But I think it doesn't mean that it is possible to imagine for the future of the economy. And I think the vision is, if we imagine this platform co-op replacing the current capital-based business, I think that would be much more challenging. But if we imagine the platform of coexist with the business model of capital-based, and how this platform could grow bigger, then I think that is still achievable to do. And yeah, maybe some participants in our rooms or maybe in the Zoom, can you imagine platform of growing in Indonesia in coexist with the capital base of gig economy. So now I open questions from the forum. Anyone wants to raise questions? Yes, I have 1 and 2. Maybe you can introduce yourself and pose your questions or comment. You can start from you. Yeah.
Okay. So should my voice audible to Zoom or should I talk here?
Mas Radit bisa dicek nggak suaranya kedengaran? Can you speak?
Should I test my voice. Is it audible to the Zoom?
It is. It's
Okay,
audible.
yeah, thank you. We have advanced technology here, don't worry. Okay, you can introduce yourself and then pose the questions.
My name is Azra. I came from the accounting department, the business faculty besides the physical. I would like to ask regarding the gig economy. The idea is really interesting because we as government or even the one who is responsible to the policy should make things that guarantee the welfare of a lot of people. And I have an idea, is there any solution to enhance the entrepreneurship skills of people? Because when they are lacking of job force or workforce, people maybe should be built on how they think about entrepreneurship. Is it going to be curriculum by the government or even other ideas? And next, is there any solution to business that is based on waste? Because right now we are dealing with a lot of environmental issues. For example, like the rubbish litter that is caused by the plastic or even another substances. I think those problems could be handled by creating businesses. I have seen one business that is using the plastic waste in Bali. The name is Ecolabo, and then they are able to create plastic waste into something valuable, for example, like sofas, tables, and others. And I have an idea to the student that the gig economy could be supported by the government that could see the chance of these waste things. And I think that the waste problem could be business and could open the workforce. I think that's it. And my conclusion is that is there any solutions aside from the policy and also about farming? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, your name?
Azra.
Azra, with R?
Yes.
Azra.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Azra, for your questions. And then second questions.
My name is Jonathan. I came from Sulawesi Department.
What's your nickname? June.
Jonathan.
Jonathan. Okay.
Okay, in terms of the complexity of the gig worker, we know that there are a lot of parties that involved to the system, like the government and the owner of the platform, the gig worker itself, and also maybe the civil society. I want to be more focused to the government. All speakers, I want to ask, what is or what are the immediate response or the immediate action that the government will take to this condition? And also, I want to especially ask to Marta and Nabila, on just how about in Netherlands and UK, how the government of Netherlands and UK take respond to this condition, whether they have made some regulation or maybe make a support system to advocate the gig worker or anything. That's all they do.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Anybody else raising hand in the room? There is one question from Amelia in the Zoom. Amelia, do you want me to read your questions or do you want to unmute yourself? Okay, I think I will, if it's okay with you, I will read your questions, yeah, to Masena and all speakers. What do you think about using Kredit Usaha Rakyat, the government subsidized loan with only 6% of interest to finance co-op? There is something feasible idea to do. Okay, thank you, Amelia, for your questions. Now I'll give time to our speakers to answer the questions. Who want to start first? Between Mbak Nabila or Masena or Martins. Maybe we could start with Martin and then Mbak Nabila. Sorry, Martins, Masena, and then Mbak Nabila. Because Mbak Nabila always on the first round. Is it okay? Okay.
Sure,
Let's go with Martin.
This one,
Yes.
yes. Thank you all for your questions. I think Azra, first your question on entrepreneurship. I think platforms. If you look at the positives, I think platforms are creating is that there are lowering thresholds for people to be more like an entrepreneur, or maybe that's said more entrepreneurial. And if it is within a contract station or not, that's another discussion. But they put really the worker front. So people they have lots of autonomy what they do. Of course, depends per platform. Because if you are writing for Grab, it's different than when you are designing via Fiverr. So it also really depends on the uniqueness of the skills that you have to offer. But I think yes, platform they really can help people to really with low thresholds. Also, lots of women we also see in the economy who are really also busy with work in the house, raising children, which is besides all the developments that men are also more involved. So there's still a lot of progress to make. But yeah, I know that you can really decide when and where you work, especially also from home, like online gig work. It really creates opportunities for that, but they really need to really also think about the negative sides of the platforms and how to deal with that. And maybe another practical entrepreneurship example is in India. So when COVID started, yeah, the world was not the best place to be, as we all know. But also lots of unemployment, also in India. And then the government said, okay, we are going to start a program where we're going to help citizens with their digital skills and help them to start working online via platforms like Fiverr and Upwork to offer their services. So the government invested in the digital skills of their citizens and also help them with their first steps to work via platforms for clients and other parts of the world. So I think there are also some opportunities over there. And then about the environmental impact and also how we can also make a better or less shitty worlds where we're going right now. I think that the positive of the opportunity platform is that they are really at scale. Normally the market was really fragmented. So if you want to change something, it was really hard. Now there's one platform, and if they change a rule, it is for everybody. And you see also platforms in delivery are helping restaurants with how to package your meal, because you want to because when the meal is packaged at the restaurant, you also want to have it in good condition when the client owns it. So I also saw some examples I think also from Deliveroo in Europe, where they also were helping restaurants to use better materials within their packaging. So I think there's some solutions or opportunities in that. And also it's the start, especially with the on-demand delivery. It started with foods, then also things within the supermarket and other things. I also heard about some pilots in waste collection. So maybe you could also encourage recycling when the specific thing you want to recycle, like batteries, is also picked up. So also lower thresholds for clients to join recycling. So that was my thoughts on that. Jonathan behind. The response of government in Netherlands. There was only one case which response of government when Uber came in Netherlands. They started with Uber Pop, Uber X, where everybody could be a taxi driver, and then they just say after 2 or 3 months, but that's illegal. So we're going to enforce and we're going to block it, and that's helps within that. So I think Uber in every country in Europe they tried that and they all failed. I think there are only 2 countries where they were successful with their strategy in that. But that's the only thing where the Dutch government did anything with gig economy. So the only stakeholder that is fighting for gig economy in the Netherlands are the labor unions, FNV, the biggest one. They're suing all the platforms. It's also a bonus discussion. So the regulation is purely on the EU level. So the Dutch government really works together with the EU and also contributes also to the EU debate on different regulation on platforms and platform work. But from a national perspective, there's not so much happening. The last Amelia on Zoom about the government low interest loan. I'm really, I think that of course the big problem also for co-ops is access to capital. But I'm a bit skeptical on giving cheap money, because then you see that maybe, yeah, you can give cheap money, but when your business model is worthless, then you also throw money away. So I'm not really this enthusiastic with this. What I think they can do is maybe also, because we're all talking also today about platform cooperatives, but if you look at most studies, let's say in economics, the word cooperative never exists. In the books, never. So nobody learns. So how can you expect students went to university and start their own company to think about another model than the VC model about, okay, getting all the money out of it, and in the end IPO or selling business to Google or whatever. So I think also in education there's lots of room for also other and maybe we should frame them as alternative, because they say, okay, the VC model is the main. Oh, and we also have some alternatives. I think that's just framed as other possibilities you can choose. And of course, you have the platform of cooperatives. You also have the steward ownership model, which is also a model where the capital never can have influence on the strategy of the company. This model also already exists for 200 years. I learned when I was in the conference in Berlin. I thought it was new, but then the first speaker was Bosch, which is a German company and already exists for, I think, 150 years. So it wasn't that new at all. So I think we also need from government also from other perspectives to look at that. But I don't really believe in giving cheap money, because then, yeah, maybe in the end you can give cheap money, but then you also need to look at, okay, but does the business model all make sense? Because also you're just throwing money to a wall and see what sticks. Then that's a really bad thing.
Okay, thank you, Martijn. It's now give time to Masena to respond to questions from Azra and also from Jonathan and Amelia. Please, Masena.
Okay. So first about the entrepreneurship training and the environmentally friendly business, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think related to the labor market, I think the basic idea of platform businesses where people can join easily rather than trying to apply it to companies to search for jobs is right, because so many people who previously didn't have work, they can join the platforms through digital skills, or whether the driver-based platform like Grab and Gojek, yeah. Because I think we usually think that, okay, if you don't, one thing that maybe we need to realize is most of the time UMKM or small and medium business, micro business especially, most of the time they are a last option. So people choose to create micro businesses because they cannot get any decent jobs or decent works. And the scale is small and they usually cannibalize each other. Maybe if you know warung around your house, maybe a few meters from there will be another warung, and then another one, and maybe warung bakso, a few hundred meters there will be another bakso. So their scale of economics will not be good, and if they get workers, usually the workers are not paid well. So I think entrepreneurship training is not always the best solution to most of the income problem. So I think I defer to Martin about how platform businesses will grow people's entrepreneurship, but still, if the power balance between the platform and the partners are still like this right now, I think what Mbak Nabila was saying, that a few researchers already see that there will be no decent work in platforms, might be a reality. So it should be, we need to change whether regulation or data portability or any other solution. Because if the trend continues, even though people's entrepreneurship will be trained through these platforms, it will not be a sustainable job. they need to somehow get out of the platform to get an actual decent work. So I think, yeah, this is not an all solution. This is just the beginning, because I think in another sense, platform work is actually a symptom of a bad job market. Yeah, so we can blame the government or the business, but people take this job because there are no stable and good jobs in the market. And then for the environmentally friendly business, yeah, I think, yeah, there's something that many businesses and many people are getting aware. There are so many ESG or green investment, ESG investment. I don't think platform is the main. Yeah, I think that's one of the option of how to create an environmentally friendly business that focus on maybe, because I think there are some platform business that is focusing on environment, mostly like bank sampah, waste banks that created collection points that is showing on the app, and people can come to the collection points or maybe even order the courier from the waste collection company to come and to get the waste, and they will get money from there. Yeah, I think that's just one of the options. Yeah, I think that's my comment on the entrepreneurship training and environmentally friendly business. For the government response, I think that's not from my side, right? So it's on UK and Netherlands. And then I continue to what Amelia was asking. How about using KUR to subsidize to finance co-ops? Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, KUR mostly given to individuals. So maybe the individuals can, for example, maybe 5 or 6 people can apply for KUR, but the KUR will be pulled again. So maybe 1% can get 30 million. So 5% we can get 150 million. And then that 150 million is used to build the company. Maybe that's one option. I think, yeah, I've heard producer co-op. Producer co-op is mostly farmers. They are being didampingi apa ya? There is an organization called Agritera. They organize farmers and to create a factory to process their harvest. I think they tried this method, and some banks are willing to give this option. So I think that's an interesting option to try. But still, yeah, this is a loan, so they are asking for collateral. That's one thing that we need to be aware of. I think that's an interesting idea, and I don't think people already tried it. I only heard from this organization for 1 or 2 cooperative case.
Okay, thank you, Mas Hena. And now for Mbak Nabila and a bit of announcement. After this, Mbak Nabila will leave us for another meeting. So maybe later on, after response, Mbak Nabila could give some sort of like closing statements about the futures of our gig economy. Please, Mbak Nabila, time is yours.
Thank you so much, Mbak Suci. So yeah, I think the only questions that specifically addressed to me is regarding policy response in Indonesia. Well, as I mentioned previously, when we're talking about policy response in Indonesia, we're basically still lagging behind most of what has been done by a lot of other countries, one of which is UK, because even until now, the government itself seems to be having a difficulty to decide which ministries or which part of the governments that will be responsible over this whole gig thing. Because like if we're talking about gig economies that mainly happening in Indonesia, it's usually related to 3 ministry at least. So Ministry of Manpower, because it's related with labor, and Ministry of Informations and telecommunications. I don't know what's like, Pencominfo, like what's an English words of that. And then another one is Ministry of Menteri Perhubungan. What's Ministry of Perhubungan? Yeah. What is that? What's an English words of that? Why am I blank here? Is it transportation? Yes,
Transportation,
it's
maybe.
the Ministry of Transportation. Yeah, and for until now, at least until now, the only ministries that are making several regulations regarding gig or online work is actually Ministry of Transportation. The only ministries that are doing some of the policy response is the Ministry of Transportation. From that side, you can imagine that all of the regulations that we have regarding gig economy is only related with online transportations, even though we already keep mentioning that gig economy is not just online transportations. There are so many other services that are being done by gig workers. So because most of the regulations, all of the regulations basically are only coming from Ministry of Transportations, there are even some gig companies like Gojek or Grab who has several different services. Like for example, Gojek have GoRide as well as GoSend as well as GoFood. All of those services are not bound by the same regulations because the only services that are bound by the regulations is only the GoRide side. But the GoSend, the GoFood, and the other services that they're having is basically unregulated at all. So therefore, the tariff that are being given by the workers who are doing the services of GoRide is very different with the ones that are being done by the services like GoSend and GoFood and etc. So there are also reasons why new platforms like Shopee Food, for example, who's exempting themselves from the services like transportations, because Shopee Food only have food and courier services, is basically unregulated at all, because the current regulations that we have is not applicable for them because they don't have a transportation services. So that's basically the it illustrate how lacking we are when we're talking about Indonesian's regulations. And it's not like we just have these gig companies like two months ago or 2 years ago. Even we have it for like almost 10 years, and it's still happening until now. So of course it's kind of frustrating. And if we compare it to the regulations that and policies response that are being done by the other countries in your questions, I have to comparing it with UK. The ones that UK has is more they have more policies response. But another reason why they have more policies response is especially in UK case is not because they're good at making regulations, it's because the workers are keep making a litigations case regarding their working conditions. So because of most of the policies response that UK has right now is basically stemming from the case litigations or from the case that brought to court. And for example, there are very famous decisions on the Supreme Court of UK that are basically stated that Uber workers, the one who's driving for Uber is an employee, and therefore is a worker, so like an employee in the company. So those kind of cases is the one who made the policies response happen. So to be completely honest, after 2 years of learning about UK's decisions and UK policies response, I keep thinking of like, well, maybe if we only waiting for the regulations, it won't happen anyway. Well, probably European is like it's a different story, because like they have a European directive that will direct the countries in the European Union to comply with the EU directive. And the EU directive is basically, I think, like more active of making regulations regarding gig economy. But when we're talking about each of the countries, probably thinking of the countries that will make a very good regulations of gig economy, or on waiting on what the government do, won't give us any benefit. So therefore, the workers itself has to do something, and then, but then usually it leads to the next questions that will be asked to me regarding policies respond in Indonesia is why no workers is going to the court, just like what the other workers is going, the other gig workers is going to the court in the other countries. And well, we need to have another discussions to discuss about that, because like there are so many different factors that probably will answer the questions on why the workers is not going to the court, which is not actually a correct sentence, because there are workers who's going to the court, but our court is basically more is not really flexible on defining what kind of working relationship that can be brought into the labor court. So therefore, it's kind of hard for the workers to go to the court. So that's one of the reasons why we don't have any case litigations yet regarding this gig economy and the employment classifications. And yeah, so I hope that answers the questions. Like we don't, if we compare it in Indonesia, we don't have it yet, and we also don't have any case law, even though we're not really a common law countries, but case law is actually still a good thing to see how the law evolve in that countries, but we don't have that in Indonesia yet. While in UK they have several, a lot of, I think like they have almost hundreds of case law regarding gig economy, because the workers keep going to the court and asking about their employment classifications. And the tendency right now is more and more of the court are saying yes to employment classifications. More court are saying that yes, worker has an employment relationship with the platforms, but in a different degree. Like there are several different degree when we're talking about workers classifications, but like most of the platforms, most of the court are basically stating that workers has employment classifications, and therefore after that the policy response regarding gig economy has to also in compliance with what the court is saying about the relationship between gig economy, gig company and workers. So that's, I hope that answer. And to end this, I don't know. I think like these discussions give me a lot of insight about the future of gig work in general, because to be completely honest, in this past few weeks that I've been into like several different conferences when we're talking about gig economy, the tone is started to go into the directions that I previously mentioned, that like, well, probably there will be no decent work in gig economy. So maybe we need to stop asking what we need to do. But then what Masena and Martin stated is like, it's giving a glimpse of hope that there are things that we can still do, but probably not into the conventional road, but into like a different roads that we need to try to make sure that people have a different choice when they go into gig economy. Like there is a different choice that we can make in the gig economy. But I have to 100% agree with what Masena already mentions, that we also need to talk how when we're talking about future of gig economy, we also need to talk how to make sure that there are better options outside the gig economy, especially in Indonesia's perspective. Especially in Indonesia perspective, because it's very important to make the government accountable to give a good job, like to give another option of the good job. Because nowadays the government think that gig economy in Indonesia is the answer of the employment problem, and we shouldn't let them think of that, because we need to keep talking that more and more people has no good job in gig economy. So therefore there has to be an option of good job outside the economy. And I have to wholeheartedly agree with what Masena stated about like the job quality and employment quality outside gig economy is also the future, the other future of gig economy that we need to talk about. So that's all from me, Sichi.
Thank you, Mbak Nabila. And I think also close to our end of our seminar actually. So now I would like to also invite some closing statement, maybe from Masena, and then we end with a closing statement from my side. Okay. Shall we continue with Masena? Yeah, thank you so much, Mbak Nabila.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have to say bye like very, very patient. Thank you.
Thank you
Very
so
good
much.
discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, see you in Jogja ya, Mbak. Okay, let's continue with Mas Sena. Please, Mas Sena, mine's yours.
Yeah, so closing statement, Mbak.
Yeah, closing statement.
Okay.
Or yeah, I'll briefly answer pertanyaannya Mas Wari. If you have time, if not, maybe I will suggest Mas Wari to DM Mas Sena maybe at DJ if it's possible.
Oh, Arif, yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. This one question. I think I'll try to answer
Yeah.
quickly first. Yeah. How do
Okay.
you see the? Yeah, I think I'll read it first. How do you see the potential of platform cooperatives to compete in a capitalistic market against the current players? Scholes mentioned a concern about how platform cooperatives are prone to price wars. Yeah, because platform cooperatives eliminate the exploitation aspect in capitalistic business. So, yeah, I think if the platform capitalists once see the threat of platform cooperatives, they have a bigger war chest, so they can put aggressive prices to kill the co-ops first. But I think that's why we need to actually see the market and analyze and validate the potential opportunity that is actually unseen or maybe not realized yet by the players, so that we can be building our castle in small steps. That way, I mean, we need to be able to create service that actually give values that are not prone to price wars at the beginning. So we need to be able to see that first, because yeah, cooperative is a business, right? So we need to be able to create a good business first, so that the validation process, the startup process of validating the market, creating MVPs, that is still needed. And in my perspective, because platform cooperatives already eliminate the exploitation aspect, I think we should be seeing the platform cooperatives should be able to give better for the consumers, for the partners, rather than the capitalists or the venture sucking up the money for their to growing their funds. So I think the removal of the exploitative aspect of capitalistic business should be a beneficial characteristic of platform cooperatives, because that means the money will be back to the people who actually depends on the platform. Hopefully that answers. If not, maybe we can DM on IG or WhatsApp. Second one, platform cooperatives require transparent data management due to their collective decision-making nature. However, ride-hailing gigs are built on top of the idea of surveillance capitalism. Drivers' location and performance are tracked and ranked by algorithm, which is totally against the spirit of platform cooperatives. How this data transparency protection dilemma could be solved? I think it's a surveillance capitalism if the benefit of the surveillance is not back to the drivers, because the data is being taken, is being monitored, but they are not getting the majority of the benefit. And as long as they are the owners, the drivers are the owners, they can create policies. They can push for policies that, hey, maybe we need to tweak the algorithm. Hey, maybe we need to decrease the data that is being collected, while still maintaining the platform to be usable by the consumers and still working as intended. So I think this dilemma is, as long as we can discuss and we can create policies, the drivers themselves are the ones that can create policies. I think this is not actually a dilemma, because that's the basic of democracy, right? So basic principle of democracy is, for the decision that impacts your life, you can put your opinion and you can put your vote. That's I think the basic spirit of democracy. So as long as you can change the decision, you can tweak the policy that impacts your lives, in this case the drivers, it is not a problem. We can always see the impact, or maybe this data is not dangerous, so maybe we need to make sure this security of this data is safe. The drivers can push for that. And maybe, oh, we need this data to get a better routing analysis. We need to take the data, and everything is transparent to the drivers because they are the owners. So ownership is the one thing that is making sure every policy created by the platform cooperatives is benefiting the owners. Hopefully that answers. The closing statement is, yeah, I think the sentiment from Mbak Nabila is, I agree with that, because yeah, for me myself, when I found platform cooperative, it was I think 6 or 7 years ago. We've already tried many things to build the discourse in Indonesia. At least it's improving compared to what we have in 2017, because at that time I felt alone, but now we already have many people thinking about it, but still we haven't been able to crack how to bring this to mainstream and how to create models. Just like what Martin was saying, we need successful models, because yeah, worker co-op or platform co-op in academia, in schools, there are none. Or even though if we have anything about co-op in the literature or in the school curriculum, it's just maybe 1 or 2 pages, and they are not actually explaining the potential and the benefit of creating a cooperative business. So until people can see it as a viable option, that means we need to create the ecosystem, the capital ecosystem, the skill ecosystem, the regulation maybe, and so many other things. Yeah, we need to still fighting. And for me, at least, yeah, even though I was at the beginning, every solution for everything is co-op. For me, I was a co-op maniac, but now I can see with time, I can see that so many things need to be, it doesn't have to be a co-op. There are so many things, as long as the impact is a better life for workers, for partners, for writers, for partners, for drivers, and anyone living and human, I think we need to try. So from regulation perspective, from data sharing, like what Martin was making, Gig CV, that will make, yeah, the data is portable, and from the community organizing, the drivers themselves organizing, customers are demanding more and more transparency. Yeah, we should do anything that will make our collective lives better. So I'm opening up and inspired by many solutions that are not solutions, many discussions, not necessarily solution, but discussions that will, yeah, inspire me further in the journey. Thank you, Mbak Suci, for inviting me, and thank you, Martin, Nabila, for the inspirations.
Thank you, Sela, for sounding more discussions about platform co-op, and I totally agree. We need to talk more about these platform co-op ideas. And now, Martin, any closing statement from you?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll keep it short because we're kind of running out of time. I think first, thank you, Anna, and your team for organizing. I think we really need to also get some effort on that for this meeting, also for everybody attending offline and online discussion, and also the 2 other speakers. It was nice to see talking with Alton Villa, talking about the European directive from London. UK not the EU anymore, so it must be frustrating for her not being a critical part of the discussion anymore. But she gone now, so maybe she already thought this government would come. And also, what I like about her talk today is also that it's more than only transportation. If you look at the Netherlands, I have a website. You can look probably depends on your definition. Where I made a open of all e-platforms active on Dutch markets, and they're now over 95. Just in one small tiny country. So there are much more, different e-platforms than only the on-demand platform we're talking about. But the same, also great to see you work, and also how you also grow in the process. Really nice to see also how honest you was in that. First being the co-op ambassador, and now also the broader. Okay, but we really need to start from the question of the problem, and not from the solution goes to offer. So not okay, everybody needs to be a goal, but okay, can it go contribute to the goal that we have? And it's also good to also take the goal principle broader into the government platforms. There's some papers where thoughts, where by example the workers they join in the cooperative and as a cooperative they negotiate with the capital platform about good conditions. And I think we need to look much broader on how we also get the democratic governance into the platforms. And I think also here also regulation can also play a role. But what we saw now with happening with Twitter, is a public news feed owned by a maniac with lots of money. And of course, we all now see by example that we also need to have some democratic governance systems within such big infrastructural platforms. And I think we also need to regulation on that, which unfortunately is not easy, but that's life. To conclude, I think it's important that my last thing I want to share with you. There is no planet gig, like I said before, and the challenges and future scenarios, they are never in silo, but please also look broader than that. To improve, there's no one size fits all solution, and not just one taker is responsible. We all are. In fact, it's also yourself, also as a user, a client of the platform, because if you're using platform, you also get kind of a step. Okay, I think you do the right job in that. So also there's also a responsibility for the worker. And it starts with also listening to the demands of the workers, because we're talking, especially also in academia, a lot about gig workers and with gig workers. And I think that's good to change lots. Also in politics and unions, so that's another discussion. And last, I think it started with not echoing the language of the platforms. Even Masena, who's really a fan of corporates, use the word partners. Which is a word coined by the platform. Also things like ride-hailing platforms, ride-sharing, these kind of things. I think we sharp not echoing these phrases on the platform, because it doesn't really have language. It's really important in discussion. A lot of people also look beyond the platforms. So also outside the side if you really want to make a impact.
So thank you, Mines, and thank you for all of you who came to these rooms. Let's big applause for and thank you for those who also joining via Zoom. I also like to invite you to join our STAIR community. STAIR is Science, Technology, and Art International Relations community. The idea is to bring out more interdisciplinary discussions into IR studies. And a bit of teaser for our next month webinar will be about video game. So let's join. Don't forget to join our webinar or discussions next month. Thank you for today. And before we leave, let's take a pictures together. Okay. So thank you. I'll close our webinar today.